Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's forecast. Today we are talking about this storm system that's currently entering the Four Corners region. It has already started creating some not severe weather, sorry, some storms, showers, and thunderstorms out here in eastern New Mexico and far western Texas Panhandle. We are expecting it to eventually approach further into the Four Corners region, and we are expecting severe weather from central Oklahoma down into west Texas and eastern New Mexico. That's where the most significant severe weather will be. Let's go ahead and roll this here. Throughout the day, it will approach again the Four Corners area, and there will be a warm front, and that's going to continue lifting up to the north, and it's going to help drag moisture up into Oklahoma and northern Texas. We are currently watching for any storms that will form on that boundary later on today. But again, at the moment, it's not going to happen until later this evening and overnight. But going later into around Friday, or very early morning hours, there will be widespread rain throughout Oklahoma and central to northern Texas. Flooding is going to be a massive issue, but later into Friday, as the storm continues moving, it's going to create more severe storms for Texas, especially down south near the Mexican border. Even Mexico could see a couple severe storms, which is pretty rare. Not rare for them, but a little unusual for some portions there. But eventually, the storm is gonna go pretty much right over Oklahoma and Texas as it continues shifting to the southeast. We are oops, sorry. We are expecting more severe weather, possibly in eastern Texas and even into Dixie Alley, possible. Let's go ahead and go to dew point, but also let's go ahead and go into more regional here, into the south central U.S. And wait for that to load. We are currently looking at already some moisture return here. Central Texas starting to pile up on that moisture, but it's going to be later this afternoon. Here's 3 o'clock, and you can see that moisture start entering Oklahoma. But what we really want, what we really gonna need for these storms to do is hopefully this moisture doesn't lift too far north. But if it does, anything that can stay within that moisture as it approaches central Oklahoma and southwestern Oklahoma, where most of that moisture is there in central Oklahoma and northern Texas, that's going to be where the highest threat for tornadoes is. Tornado threat is low, but not zero, because most of these storms are going to be elevated for wind and hail. However, any storms that can stay within that moisture, along with that warm front, that will allow vorticity. We could get a tornado or two out of that. And then eventually, this is going to shift just a little further east before getting pushed down to the south later on in a couple days when that cold front moves through. But there will be quite a bit of moisture left over, and that's because of the constant rains. That low pressure system is going to pretty much push a lot of that moisture around it and create again constant rains for Oklahoma and some portions of Texas. Temperatures are expected to be around 6 o'clock p.m. today. Maybe some mid to upper 70s in some areas, but where that moisture is highest, there will be a couple of isolated 80s here and there, especially there in Oklahoma. But eventually things will cool down when the overnight hours hit. But definitely keeping a very close eye on these storms uh, going into Oklahoma and Texas. Now, another problem is going to be the mixed layer CAPE values going into later this afternoon and evening. Again, where you can see that moisture, it does create a lot more instability, about 1,000 to 2,000 joules per kilogram. But going up here into central Oklahoma, that CAPE value remains up to about 1 to 2,000 joules per kilogram. and into northern Texas. This is where I think the strongest storms will be if this model continues to show this. Any storms that go up in that Cape Valley will produce large hail, damaging winds, and a tornado or two. And eventually, this Cape Valley does shift further south into Texas tomorrow, where we will see severe storms down here in southern Texas and even far northern Mexico. And eventually, again, all this will get shifted south if that cold front moves through. Let's go check out the significant tornado parameter. Later today, when that moisture returns, the significant tornado parameter does bring up an area of possible solution here. I do think anywhere from Oklahoma City Metro down to the southeast, likely towards somewhere such as Lawton or Fort Sill. From about far northwestern Texas into central Oklahoma, which does include Oklahoma City. I think this is roughly where we'll see the most tornadic activity when it comes to instability, vorticity on that boundary. But we'll just have to keep a very close eye on it. Going into reflectivity. Here again, those storms you can clearly see back here in eastern New Mexico. That is because of the jet stream winds exiting into this region, and that's going to cause some of these storms later today. And this is when we'll start seeing that severe weather at around let's see, oh, hang on. Sorry, but later this afternoon and evening, we'll start to see some storms going off in far south Colorado and northern New Mexico. Those could be isolated severe, but it's when that warm front and that low gets closer and those winds and the dry line, the warm front all gets set up, we will start to see some storms going off in western Oklahoma. That shift kind of east northeast. Watching those storms very closely, this model actually brings up what looks to be a couple of good cells off of that warm front just southwest of downtown Oklahoma City, and these will continue to track southeast. But what you can clearly see here is these storms expand, but we also see that dry line creating some problems there in Texas as well. But a lot of these extra storms will pop up. Now, these won't be severe. These ahead of it in southeast Oklahoma and central Oklahoma will be severe, but everything behind it will not, as that's behind the front. But as these storms continue to progress southeast, we will start to see another round of storms into Friday. And it does look like some of this, even up into northern Oklahoma, could be severe. But we're going to have to watch just all this very closely. And particularly these storms down here in Texas. That's going to be the most significant spot, but it wouldn't surprise me if we see a possible marginal risk get extended up here into southwestern Oklahoma. Depends on where that front is. And going off into Saturday morning, this storm system should start to move out. The main pressure low will be right here. You can clearly see where that front is now, pushing these storms to the south. But we do see some of that hurricane effect. As the low deepens, it rips some of that excess moisture around it. Now going to excessive rainfall outlook. This is for flooding. We do have a level 1 marginal risk down here for flooding. Two of them, actually. One of them probably due to mostly snow melting, possibly there in southeastern Utah and western Colorado, and some rain showers. And from Wichita, Kansas, into Oklahoma City, Dallas, Texas, and off to the west, we do see that blob of green. But the biggest problem is going to be into Friday, tomorrow, where we see a much larger slight risk here from the Mexican-Texan border. This includes Austin, Texas, Dallas, Texas, Oklahoma City, and Tulsa, Oklahoma, where we are anticipating 5+ inches of rain across Oklahoma especially. And going into Saturday, the flooding risk gets extended off into eastern Texas and Louisiana. But the marginal risk continues across Oklahoma, including Oklahoma City and Tulsa, Oklahoma. That is going to be due to that, again, excess moisture wrapping around the main low. But going into the next couple days, this system will eventually press all these storms off into the east, where some flooding risks will continue. But going into the severe weather outlooks, we have a level 2 slight risk from about Oklahoma City down to the southwest. I do think this could be extended again in further northeast because where these storms are, the ARRR does show storms firing off just west of Oklahoma City, and some of them may try to spin and rotate. And I do see like one or two pretty decent semi-discrete cells as well, so we're gonna have to keep a watch on those. And a marginal risk extend way off into southern Colorado and central New Mexico. That's for any cells that can fire off the cold front and dry line. Let's go and start with the 2% tornado risk here. I don't entirely agree with it being sent all the way out west like this. I do think it will be more like a Wichita Falls up to Oklahoma City, with anything that can stay on the boundary as it shifts north. But again, anything that can stay with that boundary can really will have a little bit more vorticity, and that could create lower level winds and possibly a tornado or two. Speaking of winds, let's check the wind risk here. Only 60 to 65 mile per hour winds possible with anything that can get down low. But this does include Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, Wichita Falls, Texas, Lubbock, Texas, Albuquerque, New Mexico, and far southern Colorado there. And the hail risk does kind of continue to go up a little bit. Maybe golf balls from southwestern Oklahoma down into the New Mexico Texas border. And we do have another 5% low risk out here from central New Mexico up north into southern Colorado. Their golf balls may be ping pong ball size with the higher instability pockets. But from about Oklahoma City down to Lubbock, Texas, golf balls may be isolated. Tennis balls could be possible with any of the stronger cells that can really go up. Going into Friday, we have a much larger 2% risk. Oh, I'm sorry, let me. Yeah. Much larger level 2 slight risk here. This does include Midland, Texas, Fort Stockton, and Abilene. The main threat is going to be wind and hail, but as you saw there is a little 2% risk issued here. This is where the highest Cape value and uh, vorticity and spin in the atmosphere will be, as that low pressure system will be pretty much right here, and the dry line and cold front will be positioned off to the west. Again, it wouldn't surprise me if we see a possible marginal risk get extended a little further northeast. Unlikely, but wouldn't surprise me all the way. Wind risk is a little more elevated with a 15% chance there. And I do think maybe 60 to 70 mile per hour winds with the strongest storms and hail up to golf balls possible down into the southwestern portion, which includes Midland and Fort Stockton, Texas. And going into Saturday, we see marginal risk get extend off into eastern Texas. This includes Houston, San Antonio, Austin, Waco, and Lufkin. As that is off into the eastern portions. Isolated tornado, damaging wind, and some hail for sure. Hail will be a little less, but tornado threat and wind threat for sure with those stronger storms. And that wraps up this forecast for today. If you enjoyed it, please consider liking and subscribing, or following, depending on what you're watching this on. I may go live later today, depending on the times. So these storms start to fire off here in central Oklahoma and northwest Texas.